Hey folks, Jonathan Phoenix here. Before you guys get into the episode, I want to tell you about an upcoming event at which I am going to be a guest. Atomicon, May 4th and 5th, 2024 at the North Charleston Candlewood Suites, 2177 North Woods Boulevard. Atomicon is celebrating its 10th year as the All Types of Media and Arts convention here in Charleston. There will be sci-fi, fantasy, and paranormal guests, along with a film festival and a cosplay contest. So, I'll see you there. Go to atomicon.org and get your passes now. Let Me Tell You a Story is a product of Carolina Storyteller, starring Jonathan Phoenix, written, produced, and directed by Jonathan Phoenix, edited and recorded by Jonathan Phoenix, and horribly marketed by Jonathan Phoenix. Man, I gotta hire a staff. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/Carolina Storyteller and subscribe to get exclusive content and all kinds of other neat stuff. We even have merchandise coming. Anyway, sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome back, folks. This is Jonathan Phoenix, the Carolina Storyteller. Happy to have you here with me. Hope you guys had a great week. This week, I wanted to go into a very interesting story. You know, there are two things that I'm very much into. The paranormal and pirates. Pirates of the Caribbean is probably one of my favorite movies. And it's probably because I grew up on the South Carolina coast. I mean, Georgetown, where I grew up, was flooded with ghost stories, but from Savannah all the way up to somewhere in the mid-North Carolina, there's just hundreds and hundreds of ghost stories on the coast of South Carolina. And one of the places, not very far from where I grew up, is a place called Murrells Inlet. Now, it was named Murrells Inlet because of Captain John Murrell. Captain John Murrell was a pirate who used Murrells Inlet as his base of operation. And in Murrells Inlet, there is a small island that is known as Drunken Jack Island. Let me tell you the story about it. In the early 1700s, piracy was alive and well along the coast of South Carolina. Hell, it was along the coast of the mid-eastern seaboard, all the way from Savannah up to the outer banks of North Carolina. Murrells Inlet, named for Captain John Murrell, was of course a base of pirates. So it should be of no surprise to you that one day a crew of buccaneers sailed upon the lone island out in the inlet and set upon it to use it as a place to store their ill-gotten gain. Of course, at this time being a case of stolen Caribbean rum. Now, rum was, of course, a very popular drink amongst pirates. So instead of burying all of it, they buried most of it. They left some out for libations and celebration. So by the time the treasure was in the hole and buried and covered up, bonfires were lit, drinks were being shared, the party was in full swing, and a single pirate, man known as Jack, well, he drank a little more than his fair share. By the time the morning came, Jack had drinking so much rum that he had drinking himself to death. And his brother pirates found him laying dead in the reeds, not far from one of the bonfires. And of course, they buried Jack and then sailed on about their way. Some months later, they came back again with more ill-gotten gain. They found the beach was strewn with bottles of rum, empty bottles to be exact. It had all been drinking. Every last drop was gone. They dug up what they had left there before, and it was gone down to the last drop. Something else was interesting. The spot where old Jack had been buried looked like it had been dug up as well. And when they looked to see, old Jack's body was gone too. Now, there was no evidence that any other ships had come. And the only evidence of anything was that the rum had been drunk. Still, they decided that perhaps it was still a safe place to leave their ill-gotten gain. So they put their treasure in a different hole this time, buried it, and sailed away. Now, of course, that time there was no rum. But when they returned a few months later, again they found empty bottles of rum just strewn everywhere. Their treasure had not been disturbed, but rum bottles everywhere, yet no signs of anything else to be found. They assumed that perhaps locals were coming out and drinking and they had just happened upon their stash because it was poorly hidden. Perhaps because they had buried Jack so close to it. And maybe, being the kind locals that they were, they decided to take Jack inland and give him a proper burial. So the pirates again hid their treasure, only this time their treasure did happen to have a case of rum. Again they sailed off, and a few months later again they came back with more ill-gotten goods. And again they found bottles of rum empty everywhere. They went back to where their treasure was stored, and the only thing missing was the rum. In its place, they found a note. "Thanks for the drinks. I was getting thirsty. Your friend, Jack." Now, it's said that on occasions, at night, you can hear what sounds like the libations of a motley crew out on that island. And sometimes you can see old Jack wandering through the reeds. And ever since, the island has borne his name of Drunken Jack Island, the pirate who drank himself to death and beyond. Believe it or not, the legend of Drunken Jack Island isn't a story that I really heard a lot coming up. It's actually was years later when I was, revisiting the area that I heard the story. And Drunken Jack Island is not that far from Murrells Inlet. Murrells Inlet is a main drag filled with restaurants that everybody goes to for seafood and seafood buffets. You got the Ghost Ship, you got Nancy's. There's just a ton of places to go in Murrells Inlet. The whole strip there along the inlet is restaurants or places to fish or bars. So it's not like I wasn't ever there. It's just I never heard that story. I heard plenty of other stories, but never heard that one. So it was nice to share something that was relatively new to me. This wasn't one that I grew up with. This was one that I heard later in life. And it's one that's really interesting and I think really, really cool. And I'm wondering if somebody at a certain movie studio hadn't heard it when they were coming up with characters, because you have to admit, the idea of a drunken pirate isn't too far from a very famous character that we all know and love from a certain franchise. A pirate that goes out and is always looking for the rum. Anyway, if you ever get the chance to go to Murrells Inlet and you go to visit Drunken Jack Island, be sure to take Jack a drink, or he's going to drink yours. Don't ask me how he does it, but everybody that goes out there seems to be missing of their alcoholic beverages before too long. Well, folks, that was this week's story. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope that Drunken Jack has inspired you to go out and explore. Just don't get drunk and wander off when you do it. That's not what the inspiration is supposed to. Never mind. Don't get inspired by Drunken Jack. Don't do anything Drunken Jack would do. But anyway, thank you for listening to the story. I am the Carolina storyteller, Jonathan Phoenix. I'll see you next week. If you get a chance, go over to patreon.com/Carolina storyteller and join the group, support the podcast, or you can go to amazon.com and check out either of my books, Through the Flames or Redcoats. I'll see you next week.